Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Gap Fireside Chat, where we talk about causes of and solutions to the talent gap. I'm your host, Pete Strauss, and joining me today is Jon Bosco. He is a managing partner over at eDelta Consulting. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation today.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks for being here. Could you give our audience a little background on your career thus far?
Absolutely. My name is Jon Bosco. I'm the managing partner of eDelta Consulting and CPA Services. The firm has been around for over 25 years. We focus on the CPA side. We focus on SOC 1, SOC 2s, PCI rocks, CMMC, and other cybersecurity assurance work. On the consulting side, we do internal audit, risk compliance, and cybersecurity advisory. Been doing it for a long time, and we really do have a very good insight in terms of the market, whether it be the labor market as well as the services market for companies. So, looking forward to sharing some of the things and experiences that we have to help people.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So obviously we talk about the talent gap in information security more broadly, but for this discussion, given your neck of the woods in the industry, maybe focus a little bit more on GRC. So do you think there is any sort of talent gap in GRC right now?
It's extremely, I think the challenge that we have over the next a few years is the kids that are coming out of college with cybersecurity degrees, technology degrees, they're not being afforded the opportunities. So I think getting some of these graduates into the work environment and giving them the grounding to learn is just not happening. So we have, over the last few years, have hired 5 or 6 very talented kids out of school and kind of put them on basic control projects to get the foundational skills to where they need to be to kind of grow. And so there's a lot of control experience, but there's not a lot of, as you know, AJ Yon would say, GRC engineering experience that's out there. There are platforms that automate certain control components that are heavily relied on, but in terms of actually engineering automated control processing, there's still a little bit of a shortage between the engineering and the control-oriented disciplines.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and what would you attribute, I guess, either the decrease or the lack of those entry-level jobs right now? Because, there for the longest time, I started a campus recruiting program myself, and we were processing probably isn't the right word, but bringing through at least a dozen people per semester. And we were a very small firm at the time. And we knew that ultimately we were going to get our money's worth out of these folks because they're going to be profit generating for the company. And that's how the Big Four have done it for a very long time. So why do you think that's happening right now where there's not as many of these junior jobs?
I think the services sector overall, the consulting sector has, particularly in 2025, has suffered by some level of paralysis. We have a regulatory environment that's somewhat in flux. Not sure directionally whether some of the rules and regulations are going to be enforced the way they have previously been enforced. There is some leniency in terms of regulation. The crypto regulation market is coming into fruition. Easing some of the burden on some of these companies coming along. AI is taking extreme prevalence, although that market is being defined as we speak with some of the regulations that we're seeing in California, which is taking the charge, in terms of how these things AI LLMs are going to be deployed through some level of safety and guardrails. So I think the regulatory market is in some level of flux, which has resulted in limitations in terms of investment and compliance. And conversely, the willingness to, and because the sector is lagging, the ability to bring on, kids out of college has also lagged with material declines in hiring classes that you're seeing within the Big Four. I mean, the Big Four notoriously would hire, as you had indicated earlier, 50, 60 incoming, juniors and seniors in advance. You're seeing less of that. And particularly investment banking. I mean, that's pretty public knowledge. Investment banking classes are being delayed from onboarding and even have been substantially shortened. And it could be the result of the advent of AI and those types of things. So.
Yeah, well, and as they say, markets don't like uncertainty, and there just seems to be a lot of uncertainty right now. And I mean, I see that happen not just at the entry level, but also at the executive level. So many people I've talked to that are CISOs are having difficulty finding work right now or changing jobs. The people that are currently out of work can't seem to land. And the people that are currently working but have been looking for many months. So I have to wonder, what the heck is going on that we don't have entry level roles and we don't have as many executive level roles. It seems like the majority of the hiring is for senior individual contributors, and that's across disciplines, GRC, AppSec, DFIR. Everybody wants to hire the doers that have done it before versus, I guess, altruistically or for their own purposes, training the next generation. What's the business case to be made there, since you guys were able to do this and train some of these folks? How do you justify it, or what's your reasoning?
Well, first of all, going back to the initiation, making the investment in some of these kids coming out of college, particularly the ones that I have for a year or two, have really generated substantial returns. It really comes down to a selection process. We've gone through the process of hiring kids out of college and with some very variable results. This class, these few last year classes have been extremely productive for us. And so, so it's making the investment. I mean, I think it comes down to recognizing that investing in these youth are extremely important for the sustainability of your business. And by the way, conversely, these kids really bring in a different dynamic in terms of how to use technology. So it takes multiple generations to recognize the fact that each generation contributes a different type of skill to bring to the forefront. And we've had various successes about little different tools that we've created to make our services much more efficient. And so it's just the recognition that each generation adds a little of some skill that other generations do not have. So, yeah. And it's really benefited us.
Yeah, well, and I feel like you have to almost look at the medium to long term versus focusing on what are they going to contribute on day one, knowing that you're going to have to train somebody. What is your, if I can ask, what does your ramp up time look like for these folks before they're, I guess, not a net, I don't want to say drain, but like to where they're kind of pulling their own weight and they're doing well for the company and producing results?
It's kind of funny. I'm going to do a little bit of kind of sharing my experience when I had been hired into E&Y, and how I developed really plays a significant role in terms of how I've brought some of these kids along. So when I had got into E&Y, they had a mutual fund client, and they used a lot of the mutual fund clients as a mechanism and a training ground for learning audit. It was a fairly repetitive audit approach, pretty solid in terms of maturity, could be easily retrofitted into kind of a junior level role to kind of learn some of the foundational elements of audit. 2025, the same kinds of things apply, that if you have certain types of jobs that allow these kids to assimilate and learn some of the foundational elements of audits, whether it be third-party risk, or whether it be base one IT general controls testing, and you provide that level of oversight, whether it be user access testing is a great example of like something like a kid right out of school could kind of understand. Like, why do I care about user access? Well, what do I need to do to evaluate whether I have risk in that space? Some of the foundational control principles can be easily learned. And then kind of going from the beginning to end, let's understand the process. What are the controls within the process that mitigate risk associated with unauthorized individuals maintaining access? How do we document and substantiate our conclusions? How do we communicate those conclusions to our key stakeholders or our auditees? Learning the process from the beginning to end, foundationally, in a topic that is not too difficult to understand, really gets these kids to critically think. And I think it comes down to the approach by which you introduce concepts. And so, and the big four were, amazing at kind of building an iterative process that every year you got promoted based on certain metrics. You interacted at a much higher level of management than you would have had if you had gone into a conventional corporate job. The same things apply here, because a lot of my younger talent really interact at all levels, whether it be the CTO level, the COO level, and they're learning how to communicate. And our clients have been absolutely amazing and patient with kind of communicating to my people. So it's really, the whole ecosystem is extremely important to introduce younger people into our company.
Well, you'd mentioned a few things there that got me thinking, boy, some of this stuff seems like it could just be fully automated. Like anything that's repetitive or, summarizing a document, that sort of thing, where, traditionally that's where the entry level folks would have gotten their start to understand the whole process of an audit, by doing some of these rote tasks. But if tools are better at doing that now than they would be, those tasks that don't require senior level experience and being able to make judgment calls based on that senior level experience, anything that doesn't require that seems to me like the tools are getting good enough now to just fully automate that. So how do you balance that, wanting to be as efficient as possible with also making sure that those junior people get the experience that they need to be good?
So this is going to be extremely interesting and somewhat we have to ethically implement AI so we don't lose generations to the ability to critically think. And so I think it's very important to kind of build our platforms that we have human in the loop processes, not just at the end of the process, but all throughout the process, to be able to allow humans to continue to be involved during each step of the process. We are talking about obviously the impetus is more efficient, more efficiency in the process and less friction. And humans generally cause friction because that's exactly what you would expect. We get tired. Computers don't get tired, but I think it's important to ethically, build these models so we are allowed to continuously critically think, number one. Number two is knowing that LLMs hallucinate, and they do, and they will continue to. And maybe they will, in a less of a manner, less hallucinate, but they're developed by humans. It's our language model, and we're not perfect. Okay, so at the end of the day, we need to continuously think about how the human's going to continue to be involved, and particularly allow for these younger generations to be involved in the labor market because it is a very well balanced ecosystem. Companies cannot succeed unless humans succeed. And so we need to figure out our place in the labor market and how we bring these generations across. Everything is so fast. It's being able to be built so fast. The things that are happening underneath the covers are not transparent. And in some degree, the end might not justify the means. We need to continuously challenge everything that we see and everything that we do and everything that's done for us, whether it be, a prompt to application or prompt to agent that's doing certain things. We need to figure out and we need to continuously challenge the process. Even if we believe it works and should work and has worked, we need to continue to critically think. And there's always an opportunity, in my view, if I say the next 5 years for me is to really challenge and play a control and risk role in these emerging technologies that are going to transform and the threats and risks that they present. And cybersecurity is going to be around for a long time. I mean, obviously, those threats are just going to escalate with the use of these technologies. There are good actors and there are bad actors, and they're using the same technology. And the only way to kind of like, if we have a push and pull of equal force, the only way to push that equal force over the goal line is humans. You know what I'm saying? Humans have to be the umpires and the referees that create an imbalance in outcomes.
Yeah, well, it would seem to me that there's less risk, though, on the attacker side to implement a lot of this tooling because they don't have to constantly be checking its output as much as somebody on the defender side would have to. Because
100%.
if they make a mistake, it's not going to have the same impact as somebody on the defender side or as an auditor. I just wonder, as the tooling gets better, and like you said, we don't have full transparency into how a lot of these automation tools and LLMs work. How are those junior level people that don't have the experience supposed to verify the outputs if they don't know how it's coming up with the answers that it's coming up with? If it's all a black box and you can't see inside the black box, how do you verify that? So,
Well, it's a great point, right? So at the end of the day, obviously we have recent laws and regulations that require the forefront models to go through some rigorous guardrail testing. They call them frontier models. To go through that. I think ultimately in the financial services sector, we have SR 11.7, which is model risk management, and LLMs are considered models. So it requires some level of transparency in how the model operates. These models are getting more advanced. The ability to validate these models are getting more difficult and more complex. The only way to bring these junior people up is to build experience across the team and have a willingness of investment by these companies, by our services companies, to kind of critically think. And so that's the only way that we're going to be able to effectively get these generations through the process to build a future of control and risk professionals that can continuously challenge outcomes.
well, yeah, and the whole idea of continuous monitoring and GRC came up during my conversation with AJ and Joseph Kirkpatrick. That one will be launching. Well, we're recording this on the 10th of October. That'll be launching next week. But yeah, I think moving forward, it's going to be about continuous validation. Like you said, always having a human in the loop. The question is, how often is somebody going back and checking manually? Like at some point, you have to rely on what's being output to the person for a certain amount of time before you check again. But yeah,
The great thing about our the great thing is change occurs all the time. If we go from Chat GPT 4.5 to Chat GPT 5, that breaks things. And the constant state of change results in the constant change of risk for which controls and validation is necessary. And so the good thing is that change is happening so rapidly that our need to adapt and continuously monitor is going to just increase. And so that's the positive that's within our industry, is that we're going to need to play a role because the level and the frequency and the force of change is happening so rapidly.
Makes sense. Well, and I think you made a pretty good case for hiring these junior folks at the consulting firms. And I've long said that every MSSP and every consulting firm, every audit firm out there should have some sort of junior pipeline where they're building people up, because they know that they can get their money back on these folks because they're going to be profit generating. What about the other side of the equation, though, for your clients that say, maybe they do have an internal security operations center or they do have an internal audit team? How do they justify hiring somebody junior when they're already strapped for headcount and budget, and they have one headcount and they don't want to, quote unquote, waste it on a single person that they have to then train? They'd prefer to hire somebody that can hit the ground running. Is there any solution to that?
You're absolutely right. I mean, most customers and clients of mine are looking for SMEs, like subject matter experts, to supplement their more junior teams so they can make their more junior teams more productive. And you need to have certain types of jobs to enable the use of more junior people to bring them through the process. Fortunately, we have a bunch of different things that we're doing simultaneously. We've established a relationship with neuralseek.com, which is an agentic AI platform. And so they're creating agents for us, and we're building guardrails, we're building risk agents and that kind of thing. So we have a multitude of different types of disciplines that we're leveraging, not just doing the control related work, but also figuring out and strategizing how to use innovation in order to GRC engineer. So, but you're absolutely right. I mean, if I could put my more junior people on the back end, creating innovation for supporting the subject matter expertise that we deliver for customers, you introduce them to the process and the learning process at the earliest stages, because I really do believe that some of these younger generations really do have significant ability to kind of innovate. One of the other things that we're doing is we're running a hackathon at Stony Brook University. NeuralSeek, us, and Stony Brook are doing a hackathon with like 9 different GRC cyber use cases to build agents out there. And we're trying to get some of these kids to kind of think about not just producing applications that their friends are going to use in a more of a group setting, but build applications that actually control risk. And that's that hackathon that we're doing in the beginning of November, just to think about risk agents. So this has to be like a movement, using this technology to kind of leverage, to kind of have these kids think about, using this technology for good.
Yeah.
The good of all of us.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess I've just seen, I've been recruiting in GRC for 11 plus years now. And I've seen how the number of jobs seems to have decreased from the height of hiring, 2014 to 2021 or so. Ever since then, it seems like hiring in GRC has not fallen off a cliff, but it's been relatively low relative to those years. I attribute some of that to tooling. Like at the end of the day, if a lot of the rote tasks are getting replaced by LLMs built into these platforms, you don't need as many humans, even in the loop at all. So it's interesting to watch. How about people that aren't necessarily like super technical, that aren't maybe equipped to be a GRC engineer? Do they still have a place in GRC moving forward, do you think?
I mean, generally, security was compartmentalized into three main core areas, right? We're talking about technical security, GRC, and then threat intelligence. More human related intelligence, right? So I still think the threat intelligence, the human element to it, the training, the awareness, there's always going to be an opportunity, in my view, for non-technical people to get into those spaces. I still think that there are opportunities kind of there. GRC, obviously, in my view, we're getting into an age. I think over the next 3 to 4 years, as significant events occur, whether it be a major cybersecurity event that we've seen only in movies, where our critical infrastructure goes down, and we're all trying to figure out like how we mitigate the risk of critical infrastructure failures, and everyone starts to kind of figure out how they can lock their systems down, and we need to re-engage. I think big events trigger action, which would result in in a hiring frenzy for certain types of individuals. So sometimes it's event triggered. But I think there's in the cybersecurity space in particular, I think there's opportunities across different skill sets. I also think there's like a big movement, and I'm probably going to see, and Peter, we'll probably see this over the next few years. Kids not going to college. Every billionaire that's out there and every significant, impactful person said, you don't have to go to college. It's not important. I would say that, for certain kids, that might be the truth, not for all, because college is about learning, but it's also about maturing. And so it's going to be extremely interesting as you get into the market of non-college educated kids and where their place in the marketplace is if they're not entrepreneurial.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it even changed quite a bit when I went to college versus my parents. They told me, get a degree, you'll be employable, you'll have job offers coming out of college. That was not the case for me graduating in '08 with my bachelor's. So I went back to school and got my master's because I didn't know what else to do.
Me too.
But,
I was a little older than you. I had the Gulf War in 1991, and you had obviously the the 2008 crisis. When you come out during that, you go back to your master's. I went back to my master's, got my accounting degree from a technology degree. Obviously, you go back in certain significant events to figure out what you want to do in life. But you're right. But then you have all these kids that are not going to college because of the messaging that we're providing, which in my view is going to increase the number of kids that are not going to college because they believe that they don't need to go to college.
well, and if nobody can find a job, regardless of whether they went to college or not, it's like, why spend tens of ththousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars?
100%.
Are you really getting that much value out of a degree if you can't get a job?
100%. We agree. We're in agreement that yes, the worst case scenario, if no one's getting a job, you're not going to college, obviously. But we have to figure out. I mean, all of these things, these fears that we all have with technology replacing us, they're justifiable fears. However, companies need to recognize, unless we have a minimum national income that enables everyone to sustain, that if that's not in place, there's two things that are going to happen. Number one is those companies that are driven by citizens or people that need jobs are going to fail. Number two is there's going to be significant poverty and chaos that's going to unstabilize us. Those two things, honestly, the equilibrium that is necessary to have a fully functioning economy has to remain. And so those two things are the largest threats, right? And I think people at the top of these companies recognize that we need to be smart about the way we deploy this technology. We need to be smart the way we create efficiencies and we continue to maintain our workforce. And how much are we willing to compromise from a labor market perspective from the efficiencies gained by these technologies in the absence of having a national minimum income? you know, and those types of things need to kind of be addressed. These are beyond yours and my pay grades, but but our forget about our financial safety because that's one piece of it. Our physical safety will be at jeopardy if no one could find jobs and there's a high degree of poverty in this country.
Yeah.
I think everyone would agree that there would be some substantial impact if everyone thinks that AI is going to replace 50% of this workforce. So, but that's something to really kind of step back, get rid of the fear mongering, because there's a lot of fear out there. AI is going to replace 50, it's going to replace everybody. And don't get me wrong, I'm in that. Listen, that creates anxiety for me and for my kids. Like I get concerned about, my kids and their work experience and their longevity in this workforce more than because my career is much shorter than my kids' careers are going to be. But that kind of anxiety has to be stemmed in some way. So,
yeah, well, I think one way to do it is to figure out where automation, the corners of the market where automation can't reach, essentially. Like there are some skill sets that a machine can never have, essentially. And I think that's the human facing emotional connections you make with people. So that's what I've been telling people that are job seekers these days is you have to double and triple down on your human connections, because if you're applying to a job that has 1,000 other faceless applicants and the internal recruiting team, each of their recruiters has 30 open jobs on their desk and each position has 1,000 applicants, how can they possibly get back to everybody? You have to find a way to, I mean, they can. Don't get me started on that.
Automated fashion.
Yeah. But you almost have to short circuit the process somehow and skip the line. And the only way to do that is to know people. But I think especially leading up to the last few years, a lot of people neglected their networks, for lack of better terms, because hiring was hot and heavy. Everybody was getting approached by people like me all day. And so they felt like, hey, I don't need to do anything. The jobs are coming to me. And then it's like somebody flipped the light switch in 2023-ish. And I don't know if you follow Stefan Waldenvogel. He's on LinkedIn. He basically has charted the number of open jobs on LinkedIn. And there's this huge mountain of hiring in 2021, 2022. And then it goes straight down 2023, 2024. And that's come back a little bit, but it's still basically a flat line. So,
but don't forget, like in 2021 and 2022, people were working remotely and some people were working full-time jobs. They were getting away with working 2 full-time jobs. Those days are obviously over. I actually come into the office 4 days a week. I have all my kids come in 3 or 4 days, and we have found kind of being in the office like the most productive time. And I think that's the other thing is that in office is extremely important to kind of help build more of the younger generation connections and learning. And I get energized. You get energized when you're around younger generations. And if you're working remotely and you're 23, 24 years old, it's very hard to get motivated every single day of doing task-oriented work. But you're absolutely right. There's obviously a trend down from a job perspective, but things are going to pick up based upon certain types of events. I think it's going to be as volatile as the stock market. We're going to have ebbs and flows. And you're right. Human connections, emotional connections to people, caring about people that are between jobs. I always even right before this meeting, I had a discussion with a person that was between jobs, and I've my entire career has always been about networking and helping people along the way, and kind of navigating their career experience. And you're right. I mean, people go through life cycles when they've been making X amount of money at a particular job, and they haven't gotten the life cycle of not having a job. And then they realize that they curtail some of their expectations because the only way to get a job, because the high degree of competitiveness, is to kind of rationalize kind of their expectations. But now it's happening a little faster. The rationalization of what they would be willing to accept from a salary and bonus perspective because of that. So that's something. And you know what? Also, by the same token, you have a lot of um, a lot of retirements, a lot of the more experienced people are dropping out of the market. So you're losing that experience as well. So there's a lot of that. I mean, so it'd be very interesting to see how the next 6 to 12 months works. But also, with the downsizing of the government and some of the service provider ecosystems that supported the government, that also attributes to, the labor market declines. And so one or two things need to happen: increasing government hiring and investment. To curtail some of the labor market gaps. I have to figure that out.
Yeah, well, and it's like I always say, and I've talked to friends about this. In fact, I have a buddy. He was in quality assurance in IT until very recently, where they were offshoring all the QA jobs, and they basically told him, "Look, you either get promoted to be a business analyst, or you find something else to do because we're offshoring your position." So he didn't really want the job, but he had to take it. But he was saying, "Yeah, I've noticed in IT, and obviously I've noticed the same thing in security." Very few companies want to hire the junior folks these days, but what happens when nobody's hiring the junior folks now? Well, then nobody gets trained up to become a senior. And then in 5 to 10 years, we'll see another pendulum swing. Right now, everybody's saying, well, we don't need to hire junior people, or we don't need to hire overall. We're just going to keep the people we have, run very lean. But if nobody's hiring the next generation, we're all going to be in bad shape in 5, 10 years, especially as the folks that grew up in these technology roles in Gen X and all the boomers have retired. Then we don't have enough millennials and Gen Z to backfill. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch for sure. And I think that companies that are implementing all of these automation systems and AI, and they're relying largely on them too much, or they're overestimating their capabilities. And we're going to see a lot of technical debt amassed, where they're going to need to be additional senior people to run all of this tooling, especially if it goes awry. So we're going to have some reactive hiring, I think, happening in the coming years. But right now, we're still, it seems like, kind of in the intro phases to the 100%. Implementation of all this.
Peter, I'm happy to in any way contribute to the youth movement of getting some of these kids through the process, contributing, making impacts, providing some direction, for the next generations. Because I think, obviously, as a parent, I feel it is extremely important to leave a world better than the one that we began in, and so I think it's extremely important. It's going to take a lot of people like myself to kind of figure out how to get this generation through. So
yeah, 100%. Well, it's almost like there's two ways to justify hiring the junior folks. It's an altruistic endeavor, just doing the right thing for the next generation, and then two, it's a business case. And it seems you're doing a little bit of both there. I suppose another factor, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but if population collapse keeps happening, that could cause another pendulum swing where we don't have enough people again. Which it seems to be trending in that direction. That's probably a longer term thing, but yeah, next 5, 10 years.
We had the problem is the converse side of it, right? So what the average parent birth rate has gone pretty much into the 30s, and maybe my generation was like 20s, like late 20s. So we have less generations that you believe should live, but then the lifespan is increasing accordingly, so people retiring at 50 or 60, they might live to 110. You know what I'm saying? So the substantial burden is going to be placed on these younger generations to support the amount of people that are going to be living for a longer period of time. This whole ecosystem is absolutely amazing to me that we have to prepare for. And so, yeah, it's incumbent, like for us or me, to be in this situation. Yeah, we have to leave something for these kids to be able to support all the people that are going to live to 110. It's
Yeah, they
simple
need
as that.
jobs and skills.
They need jobs and they need skills. Like, it doesn't really take too much to figure that one out, but hopefully, knock on wood, that we're able to figure this thing out. And listen, AI obviously substantially started to, the pace of it over the last 2 years have been absolutely crazy and incredible, right? And to some degree. But we need to sit back a little bit, and we need to think about kind of everything and what the impacts are, and not allow this noise that say everyone's jobs are going to be gone. Like the founder of AI, no jobs are going to be in existence in 2030. It's very possible, but we better think about that right now. And particularly at the end of the day, like somebody at a very high level needs to curtail some of the fear of everyone being out of jobs. It's going to be at a much higher pay grade and authority level than us, but we have to figure this out. And it's going to take a lot of brain power to figure out and curtail, some of the level of technology that has, been coming out the last few years. So and listen, the California AI Act, which holds the largest LLM frontier models to a higher level of responsibilities to start. But once again, we have to figure this thing out, and we have to, I haven't heard anything that has abated any of those fears from anyone at any level, within reason.
Yeah. Well, and I'd like to look at things, I guess, from an individual level. Like what can any single individual do about all this stuff? Like at the end of the day, you're not going to change what the AI companies are going to do. You're not going to be able to change what the government's going to do. All you can do is affect your own life and, those in your immediate surroundings, your family and friends.
100%.
So best thing you can do is just prepare yourself, be like a Boy Scout and learn as much as you can. That's one thing that spooks me, I guess, a little bit is it's almost like is it the sword of Damocles, where it's it's hanging over your head constantly, and you basically need to be upskilling or die. And there's a lot of folks that would basically say that, like, look, if you're not learning AI, you're not going to have a job in 5 years. Personally, I don't like that kind of language, but I kind of get it. Because it does seem to be that if you're not upskilling, you're going to get left behind by somebody or broader currents. But that's the best thing I think anybody listening to this can take away from the episode is you need to be learning every single day, whether that's just following the right people on LinkedIn or taking some Udemy courses or something, finding a good mentor that can point you in the right direction of what to learn next to be on the cutting edge of your profession.
One of the things I always tell the kids I have is certification. Get a certification. Just get a CISA, get a CISP, get a CISM, get a CGUITE. Just show advancement, and that's extremely important. We can talk about college education, that kind of thing, right? That's just a metric of advancement. You need progression in a career. You need to demonstrate that you've achieved the highest level in a particular craft, irrespective of whether you're going to be replaced by technology or not. You need to have and show some level of momentum, of interest, and I've seen, like, in being involved in ISACA and seeing these kids come from these colleges, and within a year or two, they got the CISA, within a couple of years, they got their CISP. I'd take those kids any day that show some level of interest and progression in their lives, that they have a clear path. You want to ask ChatGPT what I should do? Fine. But as long as you basically take those milestones in your life and plot them out, because achievement has a lot of meaning and a lot of it. But I think that, once again, if you're 23, 24, 25, you get your CISA. That's the first avenue that allows you to get into the position, at least initially. Even if you didn't have a job to start and you got a CISA before you started the job, or you in your job hunt, great. Shows appetite with that. You know what you want. You know what you want to do, and you're focused on it. That's the first thing I would probably say when I look at a particular younger candidate and I'm looking to be willing to invest. Investment is a two-edged sword. It's your investment in your learning and education and progression. It's my investment in you and building and allowing to share the knowledge base that I've created over the last 30 years.
Yeah, showing that you care about your career and you have a goal in mind. In fact, I had a candidate rejected this week from a client simply because he didn't have a clear picture of where he wanted his career to go. Granted, he was relatively early career, but at the end of the day, hiring managers want to know that somebody has a plan, that they've thought about it, that they're a continuous learner and curious, and a lot of the things that we talk about on the show often. So actually,
well, that's two things. Just one thing on that point, because they don't want to make an investment in somebody who's not going to be there for 2 or 3 years because they don't know what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what you want to do, I am not going to invest in you. If you know what you're going to do, you're committed to being with me and having my investment of knowledge, right? To return. It's simple. That even if you don't have direction, honestly, at the end of the day, show direction, because no one's going to be willing to invest in you unless you have a clear understanding and path.
Yeah, well, and it's like I often say, a hiring decision is a calculated risk. You know that you're going to take some risk on somebody, but you don't want to take on too much because there's a financial risk to your company, a team morale risk, so many different types. So
100%. Thank you.
That's a great place to wrap up. Just one last question for you, Jon.
Sure.
Is there anything we're not talking about in the industry, but we should be, especially as it relates to hiring?
I think, to be honest with you, I think involvement in associations like ISACA and RMA, these associations are there for you to network with professionals. Okay. I really strongly encourage, and, I haven't seen a significant uptick, in the membership of some of these organizations. I would definitely strongly suggest, as you enter the job market and you think that you know what you want to do, leverage these organizations and associations just to talk to professionals who more than half be willing to share with you their experiences. And so I strongly encourage that. Reach out to Peter Strauss, reach out to me, for those associations that you think would be best suited for the professions that you want to get into.
Yeah, and student memberships for ISACA and IC Squared and all those are generally really, really cheap, if not free. So it's a good way, like you said, to find mentors, to meet people in the field and just absorb knowledge through osmosis, and you can really hone what you want to do from there. So absolutely.
100%.
Great point. Well, great episode, Jon. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to find you?
It's on LinkedIn, Jon, Jon Bosco, or you'll see my email. I connect. And so jbosco@edeltaconsulting.com as well. So feel free to text, send an email. I'll be happy to respond. Peter Strauss, I'm not a recruiter. I'm a consulting guy. So go to him. for any kind of recruiting. I'm so fortunate. Thanks, Peter, for having the opportunity to talk to me today. Appreciate
Absolutely. Thanks for your time, Jon. Thanks, everybody.
that. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Talent Gap Fireside Chat. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. Hit that notification bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. New episodes air every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern.